Okay. Well, yeah, I think I can jump into some of these questions and I'll we'll just hop into these.
You want to choose which questions you want to go for?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with.
Or would you like me to just present them to you and you can choose which ones?
I think I can pick out questions. So I'll introduce it, read the question, and then give it a quick answer. John, were there any that you noticed that you want to make sure that we get to? That you want to call out?
There was a really good question, actually, and I think it's a really common one about the sensor data beyond SCADA sensors and the plan to deploy additional sensors, and if so, what brand and type. I really want to touch this question because I think it's important. A lot of the customers we work with, if not every customer, no one has the perfect sensor placement, for example. I think Nathan even mentioned that in terms of defining each pressure zone for Scottsdale. So, we fully understand that. And as Nathan mentioned, this is somewhat of an iterative process where there's a lot of different options. You can start with one pressure zone, your most defined pressure zone, or one that's, the top concern. And then you can use Info 360 Insight and InfoWater Pro to even determine where to place that next sensor. So we very rarely work with folks that are, just, hey, here's our sensor placement, here's our model, we're ready to go. So it's always a process, and there's always, future investments that can be made that, using this data to kind of make those decisions. And in terms of the types of sensors and brands, we're really not concerned about that. We're more concerned about the data and where the data lives. So, we're really concerned about where that data is being stored in terms of what database it's being stored on or what type of database. So from a hardware standpoint, we really do not care. We only care that it's being collected in a time series fashion. That's really the only requirement for Insight, is that you're collecting data in a time series fashion so that we can consume it. I know there was a question similar to that. Just want to answer that question. It's really a process to kind of, build this out for your entire system.
Thank you very much, John. If I may, I just, if you don't mind, I'll go through them. And so I'll just mention who's asking the question so we can all have that information as well. It might be interesting for the discussion.
Okay.
So we had a question from Binas Kabas. That's a little bit difficult for me to pronounce. Lead hydraulic engineer at Ian Inc. And he said, besides Info 360 and InfoWater, what are the things a utility company needs to have in order to be able to use this service?
Good question. Thank you, Benaz. So we don't actually require InfoWater or InfoWorks WS Pro. Info 360 Insight is the specific module that we were presenting today, and that does require some sort of time series data is really what it uses, and we can connect to any number of different sets of time series data that you have. Usually, Water Network SCADA is the most common, but we do have upcoming a bit of upcoming functionality to support sewer collection sensor data, and so. Yeah, just sensor data. And there's also other Info 360 modules that will focus on asset management that won't require SCADA. As far as the model, we can integrate directly with InfoWater Pro or InfoWorks WS Pro. But if you have another type of software, we could certainly look at using a simple EPA net model upload, for that incident manager workflow, and we can work with you on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Nathan. We have a question from Athrin Gerber, civil engineer, system planning at Taxon Water. Do you typically use sensor data beyond the SCADA sensors? Is the plan to deploy additional sensors? If so, what brand or type?
Yeah, and that was the one I just answered for Catherine at Tucson. Okay. And the one thing I'll add is we do, I mentioned earlier, we can use any live data really that's being collected on your distribution system. I'd say the next most common one, but beyond SCADA data, is your consumption data. So if you have any like AMI readings that you're collecting in the field, a lot of customers want to utilize that data. In our case, we can use it for that water loss calculation. So typically we use minimum nightly flow. This is getting a little deep into the weeds, but we can use the actual consumption data to get a little bit more granular and accurate in terms of that baseline for our water loss calculation. So yeah, anything you want to add to that one, Nathan?
Nope. Yep. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we move on to the next one. This one is from Elena Bronix from Bohannon, Houston, Inc. Where are the pressure sensors located and how are those locations determined? On the mass balance, are those main meters from wells and or from customer meters?
Yeah, well, we often see pressures within within a zone or a DMA. There may be a pressure at certain high elevation points within a zone. Usually, always at tanks and often downstream of pump stations, but we can really use your existing sensor locations. We may offer some recommendations on additional sensor locations that would be beneficial, but we usually work with what you have and help you understand the I don't know, any caveats with that. As far as the mass balance, we often are just using whatever flow sensors that we have between zones. So if you have it on valves, pump stations, that's great. Yeah, usually at wells where they're pumping out of the ground into the zone, those are important to have. And then as for customer meters, those are optional. Those are great to have. If we do have the customer meters, then we can do the mass balance where we're actually directly calculating out the non-revenue water from the zone. But if not, we then just get an aggregated total water usage that's going into the zone and not being passed to another zone. And so that's really the total revenue and non-revenue water coming out of the zone.
Okay, thank you very much, Nathan. So the next question would be from Sean Dent, VP at Carollo Engineers. Can you show overlaying a GIS file so you can see the pipes as a background layer in the map views?
Yes, yeah. I didn't. I showed briefly the map, and yes, we do upload the pipe location, so you can see the pipes and other assets that you choose to provide us. We're also working on being able to embed any kind of web map service on the background. Currently we store the files ourselves in our cloud, and you can toggle between those different locations. But yes, the pipes can be displayed map views.
Perfect. So the next one is from Russell De Castro, a hydraulic modeler. And it is, so does that mean any valve that you close is actually closing in the hydraulic model while the results get back to the Info360 platform?
Yeah, I assume this is referring to that incident manager module in the web interface that I was looking at. And so, yeah, what happens in that case is we close the user can close valves, and those valves are closed in that single instance of the model. So we simulate with all those valves closed, but it does not tie back to our asset database of the valves or back to the actual hydraulic model. It's just a temporary closing of the valve for that one analysis.
Okay, thank you very much. Next one from Susan Nipper, engineer at OHM Advisors. Can the software deal with adjusting timestamps? For example, if you have two different sources of SCADA data that would be needed for mass balance, but one is recording in standard time and one is in daylight savings time.
Yes, for each of your sources of data, we configure in the time zone that your data is coming from. And then on the back end, we store all data actually in UTC time, but the user in the web dashboard can choose what time zone to assign for the whole system. And so that is used. And so that's how we can combine different time zone. And as far as time stamps, we do some sampling of the data. So we take whatever interval your data is coming at, even if it's irregular intervals, at 2:47 and 36 seconds and then 2:49, we sample it into, for example, 5-minute increments. So we can then store the open, high, low, close, and average values of each of those intervals. And that's how we can easily deploy analytics where all of the data is synced up. So we can do analytics on time steps in a really easy, accessible way.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. We're making you work a lot here with this question.
That's good.
From
I'm trying to answer some of them, sorry, through typing. So
sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
From Tahira Jasmine, Water and Wastewater Senior Engineer. Is Info360 working independently or does it require InfoWater, InfoWorks?
It can certainly work independently if there are a number of use cases that don't require a hydraulic model. If you wanted to just do sensor alerting and dashboards, you can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Carmen de Miguel, strategic marketing manager at Schneider Electric. Any specific analytics for urban drainage catchment management?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat the question? I was expecting a different question.
He's asking if there are any specific analytics for urban drainage catchment management.
Not in the current release. Our initial, we released the software earlier this year, and the current target is water distribution systems, but urban catchment analytics for sewer collection systems is certainly coming in the near term.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Carlos Lopez, water engineer at Atlantica. If 2 or more pumps are running at the same time, you should either need an individual PIT or FIT to know if the pump is running good or not. What if one individual discharge valve is more closed than other?
Let's see. I am not sure I understand this question.
Okay, we might skip this one, and maybe Carlos, we ask you to please rephrase it and type it back again in the Q&A box, and we'll try to come back to it later. And we'll go to another question. Glauco from Brazil, working in Schneider Electric too. On the platform demonstrated, is it possible to trace contaminants in the piping? For example, high levels of chlorine. In case of incidents, is it possible for the platform to send service orders to the maintenance team via other customer software, e.g. SAP? Is the platform sold with all the features presented, or can it be sold in modules?
Yeah, good question. So at the moment, we would leverage our hydraulic models to do those water quality simulations and tracing, and so you could bring your SCADA initial conditions to the model to simulate from there. I know that our IW Live modeling software can run continuous water quality simulations to keep that traced. But that would be the workflow. And at the moment, the water model results don't go back to the dashboards, but that could be configured with IW Live. They can be configured to do that. As far as then pushing out the software to other service orders and maintenance teams. So we are certainly working on APIs to be able to exchange with a growing number of other platforms. That is certainly the intent of us being now in a cloud environment where we can set up those APIs. At the moment, we don't do that specific one, but that's definitely a priority in our roadmap is growing those APIs to connect with other platforms.
Okay, thank you. Now, Tanya Marquez sends more of a comment. she says, great case. One problem we used to face is how to justify to the board the investments on such a project. Maybe you can share some ideas on that.
Yeah. One of the takeaways from Info360 is, we can report non-revenue water per zone, and so that can be an indicator where investments need to be done, or acoustic surveys to locate breaks. But we also can leverage dashboards for the pump performance to target pump improvements. And one of the other things is that once you have a dashboard where you're tracking performance and KPIs, then when you do improvements, you can then also show a timeline of the actual measured performance increases. And so having these dashboards and the transparency helps you justify the projects, and it also helps you get visualization on the actual benefits of the projects to give feedback for more projects or maybe a different type of project. And so, yeah, this is a great benefit for board management and so on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question is from Eric Bones. Is the data one way coming out of SCADA? Is it possible to integrate data DMZ?
Yes, at the moment, right now, the data flow is purely from SCADA and into our platform, and our intent is to provide insights. We don't provide controls back to any kind of SCADA system. And so, yeah, right now it's a one way up to our cloud, and then we provide the staff with insights to possibly operate things, but it is up to operators and staff to implement any recommendations from our software.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Catherine Gerber. With sensor data, do the databases need to be combined, or can you use separate time series database data from separate sources, such as one database for SCADA operational sensors and another database for additional planning sensors, and maybe a third? And she says CIS or WMMS.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan, I plopped an answer in there for that one. Yeah, it does not matter if it's in different databases or different sources. That's where we're using the data ingester to consolidate basically different data sources, if that's the case. And actually, that's more commonly the case, I would say. So yeah, that's not a problem. We can pull from different databases, and that's what the ingester's for, to consolidate it and then send it up to our platform in a very encrypted, secure manner. Anything you want to add to that, Nathan?
Yeah, and once we have our data ingester deployed on premise, admin users can actually use the web interface to configure additional data sources. And so then, you can actually add more databases if you have like SQL servers or things that are easy to connect to, and you don't even actually need our assistants to connect those for you. So yeah, it's pretty open.
Okay, thank you both. A question from Homero Garza, Data Systems Manager at the City of Fort Worth Water. What are the costs associated with data transfer from an organization to the cloud environment? And he has a second question, what are the requirements to view the dashboards? And he also asks about licensing.
Yeah, I'll take this one, Nathan. So there's not really a cost associated with the data transfer. So this platform is a subscription-based platform. So even a utility has the opportunity to turn it on and off if they really wanted to on an annual basis. But everything's inclusive in that subscription. So everything from the data ingester to obviously the data transfer, all the way through the online platform and the dashboards itself. So yeah, everything's included within that subscription cost. And it's the one thing I do want to mention, just to reiterate, it's an enterprise platform. So there's no limit to the number of users. There's no limit to the number of dashboards, alerts, or anything that each user wants to set up. So it's really just a straight subscription fee for your entire organization. that's all inclusive. And then, as Nathan mentioned, we typically include implementation services, whether that's from us or one of our consulting partners. So that's, kind of a separate custom discussion, I guess, for lack of a better word. But in terms of the Innovyze product, it's just a straight subscription fee. Anything you want to add to that, Nathan?
Yeah, just that the subscription varies by the number of sensors. So if you,
I thought I said
if you're
that.
a smaller utility, it's a lower subscription than if you have
Absolutely.
tens of thousands of sensors, for example, just because of the cloud costs on our end, obviously.
Okay, thank you both. And we have a question from Carlos Garcia, a staff water engineer at Arcadis. You mentioned resampling data. If the interval is larger than the resample, how is the data interpolated? Is billing data also interpolated to perform mass balances?
Yeah, the user has the option as we're configuring the sensors. You can choose either no interpolation. So if there's a gap, if there's like a gap in data, we could treat that as a null. Otherwise, you could say extend the last known value. So we could just keep using the last value, or you can use linear interpolation. Those are currently the options. As for billing data, okay. So this is specifically on the time step. So if you have like monthly, could we interpolate that for a daily interval? I believe so, but I am not sure. I haven't actually worked with the billing data on that, but I would believe so. Sorry for a vague response on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Nathan. So now just one more general question. So how is Info 360 Insight different than a SCADA software solution?
I'll start with this, Nathan. One of the things I mentioned at the beginning is a lot of folks have a SCADA system already, which of course comes with hardware and a lot of the time software. Those are a lot of those systems have come a long way in terms of being able to do analytics. But I would say that's really the key difference with our platform is, we're not looking to replace your SCADA system, of course. I think it's pretty clear that we're leveraging SCADA data. So really, the main point of this platform is to perform analytics on that data so that you can open it up for, again, all the members of your organization. So typically SCADA data is quote unquote raw data. So that's where as a water focused company, we've taken our expertise from an engineering and modeling standpoint and put it, into a platform that can be used for operations as well. So it's really processing the data so that we can use it for operations, for management, for planning and engineering, really just to open up that data. And we all use the word silos a lot. I know it's very cliche, but that's really what we're trying to do here is kind of open things up from a live data standpoint to the entire organization. Anything you want to add, Nathan?
Yep. That's a good summary.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Another more general question too about security. How is Innovyze ensuring that data is secure?
Yeah, I'll take this at a high level. I think we check a lot of the boxes because we built this platform with Amazon, so we do leverage a lot of the data security that Amazon offers just right off the bat as one of kind of the leaders from a cloud services data standpoint. So yeah, we everything is encrypted. Everything. We meet every technical requirement that we've come across in terms of SOC 2 requirements. That's probably the most common one I've seen in the States. I know there's different IT requirements depending on where you are in the world. But the bottom line is that we work with major customers. I think we stated that at the beginning in terms of our client base. So everybody has different IT requirements that we understand that. And I personally have been a part of quite a few meetings with IT folks to discuss data security. Like Nathan mentioned, it's a priority. We understand that. We've seen everything else in the news that everybody else has seen. So we are very aware and very focused on data security. And we have a cloud services data security team that is happy to meet with your IT team to discuss some of the specifics. I could our cloud IT guy could probably sit on here and run through some of the specifics from a technical standpoint for about an hour. I've seen him do it before. But the bottom line is, that is top of mind here at Innovyze, and data security is really the priority with this platform. Anything you want to add to that, Nathan?
Yeah. I think utilities are starting to come around to the idea that the cloud is actually in many cases more secure than on-premise data. And we have a tight partnership with Amazon, which, using the best-in-class web security, and we can provide technical papers on how we achieve that for anyone interested.
Okay, thank you both. Another question about Info360 Insight. How does it connect to Innovyze's hydraulic modeling solutions?
So if you have desktop modeling solutions, which is actually all there is at the moment, we have a direct APIs with the model, so the model can pull Info360 data to the model. You can upload the model to the web, and at the moment we are building more and more modeling model data and model engines in the cloud to leverage cloud computing. So that is upcoming in the future. But at the moment, if you have an on-premise, InfoWater Pro or InfoWorks WS Pro, you can bring SCADA data through, and that can inform your initial conditions as well as the demand variations and control patterns.
Thank you, Nathan. Another question is, what if my distribution network does not have expansive SCADA coverage?
Sorry, Nathan. I think we've answered that one a couple times, but the one thing I want to add to what I've already mentioned is, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, there's also ways you use the word virtual sensor. So again, we understand you might not have a sensor in every single place that you need to define a zone, for example. So there are ways to kind of hard enter like a baseline into the software as well, or quote unquote, use a virtual sensor. So again, we fully understand not everybody has the hardware or infrastructure to roll something like Info360 Insight out to the entire network. So yeah, there's a lot of different options, whether it's virtual sensors, putting a sensor in the future, whatever it is to kind of help, complete that initiative or journey to making it an entire covered network, I guess, where you can leverage the tool for the entire network. Anything you want to add, Nathan?
Yeah, we can have discussions with utilities based on what they have and what their objectives are and what the data requirements are. So wherever you're at, but usually what we have found is that whoever gets Info360, it usually does help point out spots where like wow, if I had a flow rate sensor right here, I'd be able to get this additional value. So it does usually highlight additional places where you're going to want sensors, and so it can help give that some of that guidance actually.
Okay, thank you very much both. This has been a very interesting discussion, and as we're getting close to the end of the webinar, I would like to ask you a question for both of you, if you can both answer it. It's taking into account everything that we have discussed today. How do you see water management 20 years from now?
Wow, that's I wasn't ready for that question. You want to go first, Nathan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we see definitely a wave in digital transformation among IT groups where things are just much becoming more cloud integrated and streamlined. And so we see hydraulic modeling has typically been sitting mostly in the planning side of organizations. But as it becomes cloud enabled with the right user interfaces, simulation-based insights can really help out the broader organization. So we see models being brought into a more central place into data integrated analytics to support operations, easier use for planning engineers. And so I think the future is bright, really being supported by a digital twin where the model, rather than just being a desktop standalone copy, can truly live in an integrated environment where we can have services that integrate it with SCADA, GIS, and other pieces that can keep that model up to date, accurately representing the current state to support system diagnostics, forecasting, and so on. So there's a lot of benefits once we can overcome some of these technical hurdles that we're jumping, that we are overcoming now. So yeah, a bright future, definitely.
Yeah, I'll echo everything Nathan said. He hit it kind of on the money. The one comment I'll add is, to be honest, I think our industry is behind in terms of innovation. This is such an important industry in terms of delivering clean water, to residents, and it's so important. But when you look at other industries, take a warehouse, for example, a Walmart warehouse, for example, everything's automated. Everything's, very live and maybe even predictive. So it's really, the new technology, I would say, whether it's from Innovyze or another vendor. I'm excited to kind of see the transformation that Nathan's referring to, because I really do think we're kind of just at the beginning, kind of at the cusp of utilities kind of going through that digital transformation. And it's a very long journey. But I'm really, excited kind of thinking about the finished product or the future here where everything is a lot more integrated. Everything's a lot more live, a lot more automated, and hopefully a lot more efficient. That's really the idea here is make everything more efficient, make everything, the highest level of service possible. So that's where I think leveraging technology can definitely increase those initiatives. So yeah, that'd be my answer for that question.
Okay, thank you very much both for this answer.